Memory is something that you guys really need. This information, should have been in the first slide, in the first lecture, but some of the information I have been saying this for a long time, and now you can get that information, that scientific information that I've been saying about how memory works. There's two types of memory. One is factual memory. This is like getting a specific information. For example, you're reading the textbook or the lecture about the NP, and that is a specific information there. Or a skilled memory, this is the one that is by repetition. For example, you're trying to learn how to drive or how to play a musical instrument, or any kind of athletic activity, or going in the lab and doing performing different functions in the lab, so different experiments. Those are skilled memories. There is three different levels of memory. One is the short-term or primary memories, and this is very short. You may not remember most of it. It will go away, or some of the information will stay longer, and that becomes secondary memory. And for secondary memory, you have to repeat information, and tertiary memory that is there for the rest of your life. So I will explain this in the next slide in this image. So you can have the sensory stimuli that are there. You can experience different things that can be general sensory or special sensory, or you're reading something. That's the short-term memory. The short-term memory usually goes away, and there is a good reason for it. You don't want to remember everything. For example, you don't want to remember what you ate last year and then April 15 or April 30th. What is the use of knowing that? There's a useless information there. But if you repeat things, then repetition is promoting retention. It means that it's going to the secondary memory there. So repetition, this is why I always said that. That's a problem that some students, unfortunately, a majority of students have these habits. And I was a student once too. So that they try to study before the exam, and this is the thing that I was saying it for a long time. Doing that, you may or may not do well in the exam, but after that you will not remember anything. So the best way to learn things is to study on a regular basis. And I hope the only thing that you take away from this class and you remember it for a long time is changing the way that you study. You study on a regular basis, and once the exam comes, you review material. You can get a lot better results. You can remember it a lot more. You can make less efforts. You don't have to stay awake all night long. And even when the course finishes, you remember a lot of things. So you are converting the short-term memory into a different type of memory. That's through consolidation. Otherwise, if you don't do that, and if you study only for exam, that short-term memory will be gone very fast. There's other types of short-term memory, but those short-term memories stay for a longer period of time. For example, you have been through a very important event. That can be a happy event or may not be a happy event. For example, you have gone through a car accident, or maybe through a hurricane, or a flooding, or maybe a family or friend's wedding. So good things or bad things. Fighting, things like that. There's a lot of different examples. Although this thing happened only once, but you can remember it for a long period of time because that was an important memory. So if you repeat things, then it goes to the secondary memory, and that will stay for a longer period of time. But if you don't do it, then it will be gone. That is the problem there. So this is temporary loss. And if you do not repeat it, it will go to permanent loss. You do not want permanent loss of the anatomy and physiology material if you are going to healthcare field, because you do need that information for the rest of your life. So you may have a temporary loss, but when you go over the material and you are exposed to the material, then you can remember it much faster. If you studied on a regular basis, repetition. If you studied it only for the exam, that will be a permanent loss, okay? So you will remember. Hopefully, that will not be a permanent loss, my advice, but hopefully you will remember this. And tertiary memories these are important events that happen during childhood or other important events that have been repeated many times, and that stays there for a longer period of time. They are stored in different parts of the brain. This is why the people with Alzheimer's disease, they have a short-term memory loss because that is in hippocampus, but the tertiary memories in other parts of the brain, and that is not affected initially. Later on, those memories also affected, but not initially. So different parts of the brain is involved in different part of the types of memory, and I will come back to that. So here is the information about different parts of the brain. So one is the amygdala, or amygdaloid body, which is important for emotional memory, especially negative memory. For example, if you had, if you know somebody and you have had a good friendship or relationship with that person, and most of the events have been going very well, but one time that something happened, and just only one time everything changes, and that amygdala is responsible for it. So people sometimes use their emotions very seriously, and they forget about all the good things and they only remember one bad thing, and that's not the right way to decide about everything in life. It also depends on what kind of a negative event was that, but this is how people usually judge others. One negative thing and they forget about the 99 positive things. So hopefully you're not the one. Hippocampus is for short-term memory consolidation, so things that you learn new, that goes there, but as you repeat more, then it goes to other parts of the brain, for example, parahippocampal gyrus and cingulate gyrus. So information is stored in those areas, also dentate gyrus. Nucleus basalis, also a smaller area, and this is below the lateral ventricles. Cerebral cortex is important for different type of memory. For example, frontal lobe is important for the motor memory. Parietal lobe is for general sensory. Occipital lobe is for visual. Temporal lobe is for auditory memory. So different parts of the cortex responsible for different type of memory. So what happens during memory formation and storage? There are more neurotransmitters are made and they are released. And once the neurotransmitters are released, that will cause facilitation, which means bringing the threshold, bringing the cell membrane potential closer to threshold. I hope you remember chapter 12, second to last slide. So when it goes to closer to the threshold, then another impulse, another electrical activity or neurotransmitter release that will go above the threshold, and that will cause an action potential. So the more action potential you have, the more synapses you will have. The more synapses you have, the more memory you have. So the more you study, the more you do experiments, the smarter that you can get, because you will have more synapses. And just imagine how smarter you are from the beginning of the semester until now. You know so much more, so you have a lot more synapses in your brain, so you should be proud of yourself. Okay, maybe I'm talking too much and maybe you're getting too sleepy, but sleep is important for function of the brain, not for all the organs, but for the brain is really important because protein synthesis happens during the sleep. And what type of proteins is important for memory? So this is why I always say that you have to have good sleep, at least 6 hours. Average is 7 to 8 hours. Don't sleep more than 9 hours. It's too much sleep. Even before the exams, even before the final exams, you have to have some sleep. Don't stay all night long, because if you stay and study, you can read things, but when the exam comes, you may not remember things. Things are familiar to you, but you cannot access the actual information. So that's why sleep is important, and sleep is important for memory formation. There's two types of sleep. One is the non-rapid eye movements, and the other one is called rapid eye movements. The non-rapid eye movement has 4 different stages. It's not explained properly in your textbook, but that's okay. So in this image that you can see here, when you go to sleep, you go right away to deep sleep. You stay there for a while, then you go to the transition period and come back to rapid eye movements, and you go back to deep sleep, and then gradually you increase the amount of the rapid eye movements, but the level of the deep sleep decreases. So you will have more superficial sleep as the time of the night goes on. So the deep sleep which is part of the non-rapid eye movements. The whole body relaxes. The cerebral cortex is not working a lot. The vital organs, which is the heart, the respiratory system, the blood pressure, the temperature of the body, those are the vital signs. They usually decrease. So the visceral organs decrease. The function of the brain also decrease. So that's why the energy utilization also decreases. The rapid eye movement is a little bit different. Here the blood pressure and respiratory rate increase. The heart activity may also increase, but the cortex of the brain is really suppressed, and that's why the muscle are really relaxed, and they are the muscle tone is decreased. And the eyes are moving rapidly, and this is the time that you're dreaming. Dreaming is good because during dreaming, memory forms. Okay, so anytime you dream, that's a positive thing. What you dream is a different issue. Hopefully, they are not nightmares. How about me? Reticular activation system is in the brainstem. They are a collection of the nuclei, and they are receiving general sensory, and they are receiving also special sensory, and they have a vast network of the fibers that are connected to different parts of the brain, especially with the thalamus and the cortex of the brain. So if you are receiving a different type of sensory stimuli, from seeing things, from hearing things, from touch, even from pain, that keeps your reticular formation activating system active. And if you are doing any kind of motor activity, that also keeping reticular activating system active. So if they are active, then that information is passing through thalamus, and that keeping the cortex of the brain also active and awake. And if the activity continues the same way, then after a while the thalamus response decreases, and this is how you go to sleep and you get really bored. So the neurotransmitter is involved in maintaining you awake is norepinephrine. Also histamine is important. It's not shown there, it's not written there, but histamine is another one that is for keeping you awake. And for going to sleep, serotonin is important. So when the level of serotonin increase, you go sleeping.
Thank you for watching this video. Please consider subscribing to the channel. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up.